I think at this point, we've kind of adapted to a lot of things that has to do with this pandemic. I think majority of people have figured out a way of how they can move forward. And I always say preserve your vision. We all sort of have our own thing that we want to accomplish. We all have dreams and goals. Don't let things that happen outside of your control to control what you can actually do for your future.
Many people want to navigate life with peace and joy, but struggle to connect to their intuition. They find themselves overwhelmed, burned out, and frustrated. My name is Francesca Phillips, and I'm obsessed with spirituality and psychology and how the two can intersect to help you live a successful and intuitive life. I believe each of us can accomplish amazing things through balance and healthy habits instead of burnout. Consider this your go-to resource for where spiritual wellness and mindful productivity meets practical wisdom. If you're craving positivity and want to know how to find the answers within instead of searching endlessly without, then you're in the right place. Get ready to feel supported and inspired. This is the Good Space Podcast. You're listening to the Good Space Podcast, episode number 40, Finding Peace in an Uncertain Time with Kristina Aran. Before we dive in, I want to give my warm appreciation to our reviewer of the week, writer Stewie, and they say, "The world is chaotic right now. It's as if we lost our day and sense of purpose. Francesca's podcast, The Good Space, is a welcoming friend reaching out her hand to help guide you through the windy roads we all must travel, and with a pandemic, those roads may be hard to see. Francesca has done her homework and shares her knowledge and insight in order to help navigate through life's windy roads." Writer Stewie, wow. Thank you for your poetic and touching review. You can definitely tell you're a wonderful writer. You were showing us and not telling us, and that was awesome. I am so glad that the podcast has become a calming place for you and that you found guidance and comfort listening to the show. Thank you for being the best part of the Good Space community. If you want to be highlighted in an upcoming episode and help further the mission of the Good Space, make sure to subscribe and give us a review on Apple Podcasts so I can then highlight your review in an upcoming episode. It only takes a minute. You can pause the episode and come right back. Make sure to screenshot this episode on your phone and tag us on your Instagram story at @FindYourGoodSpace, #TheGoodSpace, to let me know that you're joining in today, as you know that I love to share those screenshots on our stories too. Listen, I'm not afraid to be honest here. A lot of people struggle with feeling overwhelmed and burned out. The number one question I'm asked is, how do I know what to focus on? Or how can I simplify my life more and feel more peace? Look no further, my friend. In February, the Good Space is hosting an event with Dr. Amanda Tobe to help you create your own personal compass, which will make clear when to say no, what feels right to say yes to, and how to be truly intentional. This is such a gift, knowing what's worth saying no to and just simplifying the heck out of your life, knowing what's in alignment and going hard on the things that truly feel aligned to your soul. This will be a more personalized, community-based process that expands on what you'll learn in today's podcast episode. So if you find your head nodding yes, and you're like, yes, I want to simplify, I want to clarify, and move forward with intention and action and just faith, then click on the link in our show notes now to get the deets. All right, here we go. Welcome to the Good Space Podcast, episode 40. Today we are speaking to an amazing woman named Kristina Aran. She's a mental health counselor, a disability rights advocate, a career coach, writer, and entrepreneur. She's the founder of ATARA Skincare, which is vegan, non-toxic, cruelty-free skincare line. And she runs an Instagram page called Build Like a Mom, which is created by Mom for Moms. It's a community to empower, inspire, and support mom entrepreneurs starting and building their own businesses. And I personally love Kristina's personal Instagram because she posts these amazing clips from her poetry. I mean, I guess we'll ask her, but I don't know if they're clips, but they're pieces of her poetry that are just so deep and so just profound. And I really enjoy her writing a lot. And the cool thing about Kristina is that she immigrated to the United States from the former USSR at the age of 16 to pursue the American dream. She was always fascinated with the study of the human mind and behavior. So she pursued her studies in psychology, got a bachelor's from Queens College, CUNY, and a master's degree in mental health counseling from NYU. So Kristina, thank you and welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited and thank you for such a beautiful introduction.
Oh, thanks. And it's really neat because you're good friends with Dr. Amanda Tobe, who we've had on the podcast a few times. So when she recommended that we connect, I was so excited. And I mean, you do so many amazing things. So aside from what I introduced you with, is there anything else that you want to add to everything that you're doing, or your purpose and your why?
Well, in a nutshell, that's what I do. Mental health has always been something that I wanted to pursue early on. I was always fascinated with the study of the mind and the human behavior. What really happens in the human psyche, the way we react, the way we, become so emotional about things. And we're all so unique and different. So I really wanted to study and see what makes us work inside our mind. And then I also was triggered, by some of the things that happened in my environment. I did have people in my life who suffered from mental illness. For me, feeling sort of hopeless, I wanted to pursue studying it to learn more how I can help. And I've never regretted that decision. It's been my lifelong passion. And I was able to integrate it very well in my career. I work in higher education, and I did previously work as a mental health counselor. I've always worked with young adults. And, I'm proud to say in a very humble way that I made a huge difference in many people's lives. And that's been my, I would say, sort of life mission, to make a difference, to be able to contribute somehow in a positive way, and to help them learn how to be better, how to navigate through different environments in a more successful way. And with that, I was still able to focus on my other passion, which is writing. And writing for me is sort of my way to kind of staying centered and true to who I am, to preserve my authenticity. It's been a huge part of my life since I was a little girl. And funny enough, I used to write in Russian since I was, I believe, 12 years old. And then once I immigrated to the US, I still continued writing in Russian because my English was very limited at that time. And then, as I accumulated into American culture, as I started, pursuing my studies in college, it was so fluid for me where I just, it transformed and started writing in English. And I could no longer, not that I couldn't write in Russian, but I just didn't want to anymore. And then my writing just changed. And I think with those transformations, I was able to become the person that I am today. I did go through many hardships, unfortunately, as an immigrant coming here as a teenager. And all of that I was able to put in writing. This is how I always sort of was able to, go through things when I would write about those experiences. And all of that poetry has always been like very raw for me, coming from like a place of really authentic emotion. And you never know what the future holds. My dream is to publish a second book. My first one was published in November 2017. I can't even describe the amazing feeling it gives you when you hold your own book in your hands. And I actually have it right here on my desk, and just kind of open it and smell it and be like, oh my God, I've created this. And, that was the first book of poetry. I self-published it. I worked on it for a couple of years. There was a lot of procrastination, a lot of hesitation, because some of those poems are very personal. I knew if I put something like that out there in the world, I'm sort of giving a piece of myself and sharing it with everyone. And I know I would be judged, but at the same time, I wanted to have that experience of people's feedback, what they thought about my work. And on the other hand, I sort of didn't care, just because I wanted that, feeling of accomplishment and reward of having a book published. And it was an amazing experience. It was a huge milestone that I've accomplished in my life. So now I'm working on my second book of poetry, hoping to also publish a romantic novel in the future.
That's incredible. And I've read your poetry, at least on Instagram, and it is very deep and it is very personal. And I admire that so much because I'm a writer as well. And it's not easy. It is not easy being raw and honest on paper and just putting it out there for whoever's reading it to interpret it. Because at the end of the day, you can't control, like you said, the reaction or what people say. So thank you for being brave and showing that when you are determined to do something, you can figure out a way to do it. And I think that's so powerful and amazing. And so I'm really glad you said that, because we talked about this briefly before getting on this call, that with COVID and everything that's happened in the last year or so, it's very draining mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I know you had talked about wanting to give hope of, first of all, how to preserve your self-care and then also continue to envision a brighter future. So is this something that you're seeing just in your community, in your work? Like, what are your thoughts on this?
I feel like, when you're going through difficult times like this, you sort of, in the beginning, you have to experience it however it affects you. You know how they say you got to sit with that pain and just kind of assess yourself, what it's doing to you, how it's affecting you, how it's affecting your environment. But don't let it stay there for too long, because you don't want it to completely debilitate you. It does require a lot of self-control, and it's something that we all, I think, need to work on. But it's really important is to identify your emotions in the situation that we're in right now. Whenever something like this on such a deep level happens to you, it will change you in however well it may be. And for everyone is different. From my own personal experience, I've experienced anxiety for most of my life, I would say. And I think the experience of immigration also kind of triggered it because there was a lot of uncertainty. My parents didn't know what to do with their lives. I kind of had to grow up overnight. I was a kid and then I became an adult taking care of other adults who were my parents. And I didn't really have time to grow into myself. I sort of always was just going and going and going. So that kind of created an anxiety for me as well. And, experience something like this pandemic, it kind of magnifies everything 10 times for you and everything starts to feel like you're flooded. So that's how I felt in the beginning when this whole pandemic started. I felt flooded. And the reason I felt that way is because I'm actually a single mom and I have 2 boys. So I had to kind of figure out how do I create a safe environment for them because they have to study at home. How do I create a private environment for myself where I'm able to continue working remotely myself? And then I also wanted to make sure that I take care of my parents who are older. It's just all of these worries constantly in your mind. So I would do like sort of daily self-assessments, like how am I feeling today? How is it affecting me? What is in my control and what is out of my control? And what I figured worked for me is that I sort of had to almost put myself in a bubble with my family and just take care of myself and the kids and everyone that I loved to make sure that I just do what's right to keep our safe and healthy and, provided for. Because that anxiety can really sometimes debilitate you to the point where you cannot even function on a daily basis or complete like daily living skills. But that's a self-assessment is so important, which is part of self-awareness. And I've learned that you can be very adaptable if you are able to really kind of work on it. And it doesn't happen very quickly. It's a process. And for everyone, it's a different type of process. You have to believe that it's possible to control that anxiety. You have to believe that it's possible to continue to take care of yourself in the way that you did before, just with certain adjustments. And those adjustments would work for you personally. But for me specifically, I just, writing once again was my outlet. I would write about everything and anything. And I kind of started meditating a lot more. For me, solitude is something that really works. I have to, if not every day, but at least a few times a week to have those couple hours, mostly late at night, without my phone, without the TV on, with my kids sleeping. It's just me in solitude, kind of going through everything that happened during the day and, sort of putting everything in place and just kind of sitting with my own feelings and experiencing it in my own way. So that's how I go through things, that's how I heal. Solitude helps a lot for me to kind of, go into that healing mode. For some people, it could be working out. For some people, it could be, cooking up a storm in the kitchen or, anything that kind of disconnects you from that chaos and brings you back and centers you to yourself to kind of continue that spiritual journey of where you can stay true to who you are and not become completely overwhelmed. Speaking, going into the future, I think at this point we've kind of adapted to a lot of things that has to do with this pandemic. I think majority of people have figured out a way of how they can move forward. And I always say preserve your vision. We all sort of have our own thing that we want to accomplish. We all have dreams and goals. Don't let things that happen outside of your control to control what you can actually do for your future. It can put things on hold. It's absolutely normal to take a pause and focus on other things right now, but don't let it affect you in a way where you're like giving up. Your dreams and goals are everything that drives you forward. And I think they're so important to kind of give purpose to our life and to give meaning. And there is a way that you can still, deal with a lot that's happening outside in an environment, and you're still able to focus on the things that you want to accomplish for the future and to be successful with those goals.
Definitely. And I'm going to go ahead and pull out some things just to point out that stood out to me, because that was just wonderful what you said. So the first thing I noticed is you make sure you set that time aside for yourself. Like, clearly you are busy and you have a lot of family members depending on you, which is so admirable that you are like writing and doing all these things. I feel like I would just be like, I don't know what to do. So you're a very strong person, which is so amazing. But I love that you're not afraid to admit as well that you need that solitude. No stimulus, or no stimuli, no phone, no TV. And you're right, that is so needed. And I think most of us forget we need just silence sometimes, and we need to allow things to be and to process. And so I'm really glad you said that. And then the idea of visioning your future. So a lot of people, and I know in the Good Space community, just because I have conversations with people and they feel like with the pandemic that they got into like fight or flight mode, they got into the scarcity mode. And in previous episodes, I've talked about the difference between scarcity and then, the growth mindset. So when you're in that flight or fight or just that scarcity mindset, it's really hard to dream. It's really hard to vision. It's hard to move forward. And so it's almost like you have to admit that you're feeling what you're feeling, that maybe I'm overwhelmed or maybe I just need time alone. But then you have to carve that time out to be able to dream. I mean, how would you do that? I guess that's like my question is, even in my own life, I'm like, I have to remember to not always be in the weeds of everything and not on the day to day. I have to step back and think, okay, what do I actually want for my life? And am I actually doing anything to go towards that? So if someone feels either like trauma or, hurt by the pandemic, or like, I feel like now it's more like, okay, when is this going to be over? Like I'm getting impatient, even though I'm adapted. So how do you get from that point to visioning and dreaming again?
I don't think it's ever going to be over. We have to come to terms, or more like acceptance, that this is just a new way of life. And how do I make this new way of life work for me? If planning works for you, maybe you could plan like some time out of your schedule just for yourself, and, be selfish about it. There's nothing wrong about taking care of yourself. There's nothing wrong with giving time to yourself, just like you give time to everyone else. If this is the time that you require to, come back to yourself, to sort of recenter and to, feel everything that's happening with you, it's so important. Just like as sleep is important, just like as nutritious food is important. Being exactly in the moment for yourself and doing exactly what makes you feel amazing about who you are is as important as those basic skills. I usually, when I work with people, I always tell them, what do you do for fun? I ask that question all the time. Some people stumble on answering that question. It's like, you don't do anything for fun? And I'm like, well, right now I'm just in school and like I have this going on. I'm like, yeah, but what about you? What are you doing to kind of, take yourself out of that routine and to kind of shake yourself up a little bit and, to come back to what makes you you? And they really take some time to finally realize, I haven't done something for myself in such a long time. And it makes them feel sad, when they have that realization that they don't put themselves first. But think about it this way. If you don't take care of yourself and something, God forbid, happens to you, how are you going to continue taking care of other things when you are the one crumbling? And I think, this is something that I always tell my mom, which is funny. She's not the type who would ever put herself first. And I used to be that way too, until I entered the mental health field and I got burned out because, I was working with very difficult patients. and I would bring those problems home and I would think about it all the time. I would kind of let it get to me on an emotional level. And then I had to be like, okay, Kristina, you have to stop. Otherwise, you won't be able to be a successful mental health counselor. You won't be there for your family and you can completely get sick. So, this is where you kind of decide and you make a decision and you stick to it. Self-care is a commitment as well. Just like it's a commitment to your job, it's a commitment to your family, you have to make a commitment to yourself too, because you have to put yourself first in order for you to continue doing the things that you love and the things that, help you be successful.
Absolutely. And because so many of us are working from home, there's not that physical separation. So do you have any exercises or recommendations for how to get into I'm decompressing mode versus I'm working? Any tips on that?
I'm a huge spa junkie. And finally, when the spas were open again, I booked my appointment right away. I love getting pampered. I love taking, like Saturdays are my sort of self-care days where I go to the gym. I make sure I exercise, I eat healthy, and I schedule my spa appointments. Just getting a nice massage, getting a nice facial treatment. It's all I need. Just give me a couple of hours to go to the spa, listen to that spa music, and be taken care of. And that works for me. For other people, it may be a jog outside. Maybe just going and getting a fresh haircut, or like a time with your girlfriends where you can just chat about things and catch up. Thankfully you can do that now. That difficult period where everyone was locked in, thankfully it's kind of passed. And at this point, you do have more flexibility if you are careful and, with social distancing and all of that. You just kind of have to make a decision to do it, and you have to actually get out and start doing things that you enjoy. And luckily, I live by the water, right by the bridge and the water, where I have a beautiful field over here. So I do take like really long walks. That's where I'm like alone with my thoughts and I'm planning for the next day and kind of, digesting everything that happens. I mean, you probably can tell I'm an introvert and I'm a very sort of cognitive person where it comes to things. I, process everything in my mind. That's the only way I can deal with things. But, whatever works for you, you have to make a choice to actually commit and do it. Yeah.
If you like the idea of having a plan and knowing how you'll get there, then there are a few things I want you to know about. The first step to creating a plan for yourself is doing the soul work. What is your soul yearning for? How do you want to feel? Is this a year of transformation and taking bold risks, or a year about wanting to restore and feel contentment where you are? Maybe it's a year of unapologetically going after what your heart desires. The thing is, you get to choose. It takes connecting with your heart, though, to make that choice. So if you want to learn the principles for creating a soul plan for yourself, you need to join Dr. Amanda Tobe and I for a free webinar on February 16th or the 24th. You can sign up for whichever one works best for you. We'll be sharing with you our definitions about what it means to live intentionally and how we do it. We'll talk to you about how to set goals with soul and where to begin with creating a plan for yourself. The link is in the show notes, but you can also type in bit.ly/intentiontgs in your browser. Again, that's bit.ly/intentiontgs. We are video recording this, but if someone's just listening, just seeing how you lit up when you thought about the things that recharge you is just really nice. And I know it's something that I've had to really focus on. And my friend, who is a health trainer and coach, she has been training me with workouts. And I'm so grateful because I honestly don't think I had it in me to just make myself change and go do it. So for me, accountability sometimes is what I need to take that extra step to take care of myself. And, we had a session today and she told me, because I told her how stressed I was with a bunch of different work things. She said, you know what? If you can just take a day where you're like doing yoga and writing and reading and you're giving your brain a rest from work, so that way you can feel like a human again. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I forget that that's, so needed because we're so connected and I have everything at my fingertips and I just forget that I'm a human being and that I cannot be creative if I am not resting and relaxing, because then I'm always going to be in that survival mode, and survival mode cuts off all creativity. And so it's almost like it's very counterintuitive to me, where if you want to be successful in life, if you want to feel happy, if you want to be creative, if you want to envision a future, you have to take care of yourself, because otherwise your brain is just survival mode and you're not going to get anything more than that. So it's kind of like a funny, not trick that the universe plays, but it's like, oh, you have to take care of yourself or you can't be creative. And it's like, okay, that's really nice, but I need to actually do it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I actually, when it comes to creativity, I'm on the same page right there with you. Sometimes I sort of want to write, but my brain is just not cooperating with me. And I start thinking what's going on? Is there something toxic in my environment that's affecting me, that I'm sort of having this writer's block? Am I overexhausted? What's happening? And there's always a reason behind it why I'm not able to be creative. And it's either because I worked all day and I'm exhausted and I can't even have that mental stamina to commit to writing, or it's because something that's happening with my relationships or whatever that's affecting me in a negative way as well. So until I work that out and I make a self-assessment again, I'm not able to flow with my writing. So I definitely understand when, things like this, they block your creativity and it becomes so frustrating at times. So you sort of have to work out a strategy to prevent that from happening. Before it starts to even happen, you can kind of stop it in its tracks and are like, my creativity is important to me. I can't allow for that to happen. And I think, that also goes along the lines with self-control and, controlling your emotions and controlling what's happening in your environment, which is part of that, a bigger umbrella of emotional intelligence that I always talk about as well. There's things coming your way on a daily basis, whether it's coming from media, where it's coming from social media, where it's coming from people calling you or texting you. These notifications are always coming on your computer, on your phone. You have to make a choice to sort of extract which information you actually want to pay attention to and have that effect on you. I don't listen to the news probably at all. I sort of, at the end of the day, if I need to seek out news, I go and look for it online, and I have my certain sources that, reliable sources that I read the news from. I do tend to read more of scientific type of magazines, and I'm part of some discussion groups that I trust. But if I allowed myself to completely succumb to all of this news media, to everything that's happened on social media and people constantly being in your ear, it would probably be so overwhelming. And I probably would not be able to even continue, dedicating myself to the work that I do. It can really affect you in a negative way. So you have to really put a lot of control into deflecting all of that information and sorting out what it is that I want in my life, want to surround me, want to be in my environment, because it can be really toxic. And that toxicity really affects people on a deeper level, I think.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting because I mean, this because I have a degree in psychology, and you hear about the studies where I think it's the one where these researchers put jams out on a table, and they had a study where one table at one point had 6 options. And then another time they had a table with 20 options. And they thought, given more choices, people will probably buy more when there's more options. But then they found out, actually, when there was only 6 options, people bought more of the jam than they did when there were 20 options. And so for some reason that popped into my head as you were saying that, because we think, oh, we have phones, we have news, we have 24-hour news, and we can get everything and anything all the time. And so we feel like it's a freedom of choice. But I feel like actually it's more work having all of these things around us, because we have to be the ones to create the boundaries. No one else will do it for us. And so in a sense, it's you actually have to work harder to have peace now.
That's so true. And peace is so important, to find that equanimity, in the middle of the chaos that's happening. It's a skill, and it's an acquired skill. I think it's something that takes probably for some people a lifetime to acquire and to master, and it's also part of self-care, a huge part of it, because mental health is not just feelings, your emotions, and, your behavior. Mental health, everything that you allow to affect you. and, your well-being altogether when it comes to the environment that you choose to surround yourself with. It's the people, the circle of friends that you have, the people in your family, your coworkers, all of that, plays a huge part on your mental health. And we talk so much about mental health right now because of everything that's happening, obviously. Like the suicide rates are skyrocketed in the past year. Even working with my students, I see how many of them are, and I don't want to call it feeling down, but they are really depressed, because there's a huge difference between feeling down and having those pervasive feelings of depression on a continuous basis, through I would say a number of months now. And, we have to have open conversations about mental health, what affects your mental health, and what you can do to preserve, your mental health and to continue taking care of yourself in the right way. Right now, there is a much bigger demand in, mental health services, which is great that we are having those conversations, whether it's in corporate America, whether it's in academia, whether it's in conversations taking place online and podcasts. I'm glad that those conversations are being more out in the open, because not that long ago, it was a lot of stigma attached to talking about mental health and self-care. So I'm glad that it's changed.
Absolutely. And for anyone that's listening right now, are there any signs or things that we should be aware of or looking out for to know if we need to get some help?
Well, I think your intuition sort of tells you when something is off about someone, and it doesn't hurt to ask just a simple question: how are you? And are you okay? Or is there something I can do? Most of the times people will tell you, especially if it's someone close to you. And I think we are in a moment right now where we should be checking in with each other more often. Just send a quick text, or, send someone, call someone and just ask, like, how are you dealing with things? Is there somehow I can be present for you to assist you in any way? Or maybe you just want to talk about what's happening. It's not necessarily that they need some kind of help. Maybe they just want to know that someone is there for them, to support them through these things. And I think we all should be doing it for each other. Empathy is a life changer. It's an amazing skill to have. And when we do something from a place of empathy, from a place of compassion, we can really accomplish some amazing things together. And to always, stay kind and compassionate throughout difficulties like this is so important during the times like this. And I think we have seen, who are the real heroes, the compassionate ones who are really lending a helping hand during this time. And I check in with my students all the time. I check in with my family members, with my friends. Just a quick text like, what's going on? Are you good? Things like this. I'm glad to feel that I somehow, they can rely on me just for a kind word, or, just a conversation, or just to tell me what's happening. So I do urge everyone to kind of check in with their relatives, with loved ones, with friends, just to see how they are.
Yes. And if they themselves are feeling down or wondering if they're needing help, reach out to people as well. Say, hey, I'm not feeling that great. Can we chat? Or can you tell me something funny? Or even just maybe get a therapy session, something to get yourself aligned if you don't have that support system around you. I really appreciate you saying that. And I think it is okay for us to admit that we need a little more help right now. It's okay to feel like we have to realign and find peace. And I think finding peace is probably the biggest gift you could give yourself right now to whoever's listening, is to find that peace and be okay with where you're at. And that's something I'm learning a lot about too, is it's okay that I'm where I am, that I'm not at the end goal or whatever. And what I'm learning too is life isn't about the end goal. It's about what you're learning in every moment and the journey. And I didn't really get that until about this year, but I'm glad that I'm learning it. Okay, so just to switch gears a little bit, I'm curious, who are your favorite authors and what are some books that you might be reading right now?
Well, right now you'll be surprised because I'm so into romantic novels, and I actually watch sci-fi movies. When it comes to academic reading, I can just tell you my list from Kindle right now. I always have been reading the Daily Stoicism, the Daily Stoic book. So I read that on a daily basis. And then just recently, I've been reading books by Deborah Harkness. I'm looking at it. It's right here on my desk. And my previous book that I completed was by David Rose. It's the Startup Checklist. I kind of always go back to it whenever I'm in that entrepreneurial mode in my mind. What else have I been reading? I'm always reading something. Sometimes I read like multiple books at the same time. And I finished the book by Carol Dweck about growth mindset. I highly recommend that one as well. It's a really good book, and she has a lot of great points on how you can actually, start working on yourself. So moving towards that growth mindset, she gives a really good perspective of what a fixed mindset is, what's a growth mindset, and what you can do to work on yourself. So I recommend that book as well.
Ooh, great. We can't wait to check those out. And we'll make sure that everything you mentioned is linked in the show notes, so it's really easy for people to find. And where can we find you? Like, if people want to read your poetry, all of the good things, where can we send them?
Mostly I share my poetry on Instagram, Kristina Aran, just like that. I don't use Facebook much. I would say that, well, my book is being sold worldwide on Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, and other online bookstores. I actually do sell signed copies myself to my website as well. But Instagram would be the best place to, visit to look at my poetry. And I do share some other things when it comes to mental health and growth mindset, emotional intelligence. Sometimes I share it on Instagram as well.
Great. And we'll make sure that all of those are linked as well. So Kristina, thank you so much for coming on the show and giving us your time and your energy. And is there any last takeaway that you want to send everyone off with?
I do want to wish everyone, to stay safe and healthy, take care of yourself, definitely put yourself first, really learn what it is that works for you as an individual that makes you happy. Happiness really is a choice, and we have to commit to that choice to accomplish it. My motto in life is always seek inspiration in everything you do. And I think that's how I've lived my entire life. Anything that I allow into my life, I kind of need to feel inspired by it. If I don't feel inspired, I feel like it's not worth it for me. So I would always say, definitely seek that inspiration for yourself as well.
That's so great. Kristina, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was really an amazing conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Francesca.
Now it's time for an affirmation. I intend to inhabit a feeling of peace at all times and allow it to radiate through every experience I have. If you found today's tips inspiring or thought-provoking, share it right now on social media and make sure to tag me at Francesca A. Phillips or at Find Your Good Space, and also weigh in the comment section at findyourgoodspace.com. You can find links in the show notes. And if you have a spiritual or mindfulness problem that you want me to unpack on an upcoming The Good Space episode, or an awesome manifesting story you want to share, give my podcast phone line a ring right now at 917-719-0867. Also, don't forget to download my free morning routine guide. It's what helped me reduce my anxiety, increase productivity, and so much more. The link to everything I mentioned is in the show notes. See you soon.